First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise, glory, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is your brother Ayash Gabar from the GMS Virginia camp, coming at you with another lesson that I pray that you find edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushai. And all you have to do at this point is watch and listen to the prophets of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai, and you should be enlightened to what time you're in, because the prophets of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai are standing upon our watch to warn you of the things that are coming to pass and warning you of the things that are currently happening through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. And, if you're not watching the news, and looking for certain things, then, maybe the spirit isn't on you, to look for these things that are happening and are about to happen. So, long story short, man, Jake is just done. Eve has had it. Her time has come and gone, and is currently going. Esau Edom, you're watching his kingdom crumble right before your eyes. And these other nations, are also falling, and so that domino effect is happening across a myriad of boards where, all it really takes is one spark, to cause all our calamity, but all you have to do is watch, and know that there's something wrong. So here I am on shithitstefan.com, and all you got to do is scroll through the titles and you can see the division being talked about, the economy being talked about, nuclear war being talked about, alliances being talked about, the MOTB being talked about, the hatred towards Babylon the Great being talked about, Egyptian versus Egyptian being talked about, the famine being talked about, the economical collapse being talked about. I mean, everything is happening at one time. And, anything can cause this place to tip and just fall over. And these people aren't ready. And unless the spirit is upon you, to look out for these things, then you're just going to be had in those days. Yahweh Shai said that, hang on one second, let me just get it, because I don't want to butcher it, because a lot of people are in for it. So let me get this. As in Salakia. As in let me get it. I believe it's in the book of Matthew. I'm sorry. It's in the book of Luke, chapter 17, and I'll start at verse 26. Let me see if I want to start up. Yeah, Luke 17 and 26. As it was in the days of Noe, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they did drink, they married wives, They were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. So the flood is coming, but it's going to catch a lot of people, off guard, you know, and they really don't have no one to blame but themselves. And this is what I really wanted out of the book of Matthew. Let me see. I believe it's Matthew 12. This ain't it, but it'll do. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous. Actually, this is the one. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there should be no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. So, the people aren't gonna see miracles and, special effects going on, they're just gonna be told, the day of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is at hand. They've been given that warning, to ship up. I meant to say to shape up, Salakia, and fly right, because, if you don't repent before it's too late, then, that evil time or these evil times is going to come before you and overthrow you. But everybody's stuck in their wicked ways. Everybody's looking for some resemblance of the past ways that Babylon the Great has allowed them to live. And now Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is taking away the amenities that you have grown accustomed to. Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is taking away the staff of bread. He's making the mirth to cease in this wicked kingdom, and the mirth has been ceasing for a while, but every year, the festivities in this wicked kingdom has been celebrated less and less, and at this point, it's almost become the norm. You still have those jakes that try to cling on to what little bit of normality that they have. But even in that, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is taking that away by causing a lot of people to lose their jobs, taking away the dainties, limiting, their food, because right now the government is shut down, and it's been shut down for over 37 days. And as of making this video, it's been down for 38 days. And this is the longest that the government has ever been shut down. And so now you're starting to see the pride of these people being brought low. And particularly you women. A lot of you women are being humbled right now, but not humbled to the point where, you're going to seek Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. You're not at that point yet. You're not at the point where, a lot of you women are ready to just bow down and just submit. Because you still, a lot of women still think that somehow things are going to bounce back, with the news that you may hear as far as, the government reopening in December and this, that, or the other, and these court judges or these supreme judges is making rules that would benefit. No, bro. Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is acting on, bringing this place down. These prophecies are coming to pass, and, and it says, woe unto them that go down unto Egypt for help. And a lot of these women have been, sucked in to that vacuum of going down to Egypt for help. And now that Egypt is falling, they're falling right along with it, And these men are too, you know what I'm saying? Because very soon, a lot of these jobs that a lot of these people hold, even those are going to be gone, you know? Employment is about to be done away with because this devil has created robots to do your job. It was just last week, Amazon and all of these other high-end, employers have cut hundreds of thousands of jobs, you know, and it's just recently come out that over 700 government jobs have been either furloughed, fired, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And so the people are really hurting, you know? Yeah, okay. We have been accustomed to making ends meet. We have been accustomed to living at a poverty level to where, you know, we can make shit happen with very little. But Yahweh Shem Yahushua is even going to bring that low. He's going to even make that a hard thing to do in the days that are coming. Because, the book of 2nd Esdras chapter 15 is coming into play. Isaiah 4:1 is on the is at the precipice of taking effect. Isaiah 31:1 is about to happen. All of these prophecies that Yahweh Shem Yahushai has said will happen is coming to pass whether they like it or not. As it says in the scriptures, what if some do not believe? Does that mean that, the works of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai isn't going to happen? As a matter of fact, let me get that. It's in the book of Acts. Because a lot of people are about to be humbled because they have walked not in righteousness or even sought after righteousness. Let me get that precept. It's in the book of Acts. Every man a liar. Salakia. Salakia is in the book of Romans. I don't know what the hell I was thinking about. Romans 3:3. I knew that too. Salakia. For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai without effect? Yahweh Hashem Yahushai forbid, yea, let the Most High be true, but every man a liar. Let the prophecies of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai be true, and every man's a liar. That sit back and say that, these prophecies ain't going to come to pass, and we're not living in the time of prophecies. We're not living in the end times, even though all of the signs are there. The men of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is actually seeing the signs come to pass. We're actually watching these things happen, right before your eyes, But, these people just ain't getting it. Not yet, anyway. But very soon, a lot of these people are going to come to the realization that the prophets of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai have always been truthful, and particularly the men of GMS and those affiliate camps that teach the true doctrine and truth in its sincerity. So let me see what else I want to get, because it's late in the morning. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's no excuse, but Salakia for misquoting a chapter that, you know, I thought a precept was in. So let me get this. Let me see. Because it's going to get to the point where, you know, a lot of people is going to start to lean on their own understanding. They're going to lean on what they know the best. And they're going to do that which they have grown accustomed to. You know, and that's not to operate within the spirit and to lean on carnality. You know. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 51. And let's see, verse 29. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. You know, and that's the end result, you know what I'm saying, to bring nuclear destruction upon this wicked kingdom, you know. But even before that, you know, the land is going to tremble. You know, the people are going to be in sorrow. As it says in the book of Matthew, chapter 24. These are the beginnings of sorrows. These are the beginnings of when you start to hear the people cry about what they don't have and how things used to be. You know, when when their benefits had been cut, you know, because they have walked in great pride. You know, many have received benefits but have not known Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. You know, and a lot of you women have had benefits and don't even understand, you know, what's going on now, you know, or who even gave you those benefits. And you men as well, you know, you Jakes as well, you know, you don't understand why things are happening the way that they're happening to you or have happened to you in your life. But very soon, you know, when shit hits the fan, you know, you're going to sit back and you're going to think upon the words of the men of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai who have given you warning. You know, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai said, give them warning from me. And that's what we've been doing, starting with our elder apostles on down. You know, we've been giving you that warning. We've been blowing that trumpet, you know. Let me see. This isn't going to be a long lesson. I just wanted to get to the point that a lot of people are going to do some crazy shit during these times, you know, to the point where, you know, it's, you know, just going to be barbaric. You know, when Jake can't eat or when the people can't eat, they'll try to, Salakia, hang on 1 second, when the people can't eat, they'll find a way to get something to eat. You know, the scriptures say that, you know, cannibalism has happened in Israel. You know, eating abominable foods have happened. You know, so expect these things to happen. You know, but what did Yahweh Hashem Yahushua say? You know, my servants shall eat, my servants shall drink, and my servants shall sing for joy. You know, and what does a servant do? A servant serves his Lord, serves his master. And that pertaining unto the prophets of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, you know, we're serving the Lord as we were commanded to, as we are commanded to, you know, to constantly do the will of the Lord is pleasing to him, you know. But a lot of you simple Jakes don't get it, you know. Let me see. Yeah, man, because it's gonna get real rough out here. Where, you know, a lot of people is gonna do what they need to do. You know how Jake get. I gotta do what the fuck I need to do. You know what I'm saying? I gotta take care of my family. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I gotta eat. I don't give a fuck how you feel about it. You know how Jake is. Jake's always on that rah-rah shit rather than, you know, seeking Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. But as we know, 2/3 is going to die by the sword, or the famine, or the beast, or the pestilence. You know, every man has his lot. You know. Let me see. Let me grab this Sirach chapter 2 and let me see. I'll start at verse 10 and read down to 14. The book of Sirach chapter 2 and 10. Look at the generations of old and see, did ever any trust in Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai and was confounded? Or did any abide in his fear and was forsaken? Or whom did he ever despise that called upon him? You know, you're not going to find that. You know, I mean, the fact that you were given the names of Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, you know, that's a strong tower. You know, that's a fortress that you got, you know, to stand behind in the time of trouble. You know, the elect of Yasharala, hey, the name is everything. Faith is everything. You know, you got to believe in those names. You got to believe that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. You know, and you got to maintain that even when you're faced with adversity, even when you're faced with death. You see what I'm saying? Jacob changed his whole fucking mindset, you know, because of the fear of death. But we pray that Yahweh Hashem Yahushai puts a spirit upon us to deal with these things, you know, because we're leaning on him and not on Babylon, you know, and it's a very fearful thing to fall into the hands of the true and living power, you know. So, hey, in the times that are coming, we have to put our faith in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, while 2/3 is putting their faith in, you know, carnality, you know, and wickedness. You know, a lot of Jakes is going to return back to Egypt for help, the way that them wicked niggas did back during the days of Moses. They wanted to go back to Egypt because the food was fucking better. Meanwhile, they were forever oppressed. You know? And so don't think that those same people aren't around. Those same people are still here. And those same people may turn back around and go back to Egypt for help. For there is no new thing under the sun. You know? The book of Sirach, chapter 2 and verse 11. For Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is full of compassion and mercy, long-suffering and very pitiful, and forgiveth sins and saveth in a time of affliction, as I said earlier. You know, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is a strong tower. You know what I'm saying? And when a lot of people are faced with that adversity of not being able to eat, you know, they're going to choose that which is easy for them. But as long as we maintain our faith in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, we'll be able to overcome that temptation. You know, having an empty stomach growling at you is a very tempestuous thing. That's going to have a lot of people caught out there. And all we can do is pray to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai that he puts the spirit upon us to endure these things, to endure temptation, you know, to endure these neglects, you know. Verse 12, woe be to the fearful hearts and faint hands and the sinner that goeth 2 ways. So woe to them that are fearful, you know, in heart, in mind, you know. Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is our defense. And you might be encamped about by the armies on all sides. And you may feel as though you need to surrender, you know. Just pray to Yahweh Shem Yahushua that He puts the spirit upon you to take that fear away from you. Because the Lord said that He has not given us a spirit of fear. You know, so if Yahweh Shem Yahushua hasn't given us a spirit of fear, then why are you fearful unless you're weak in faith? That's why it's important to pray constantly for more faith, more endurance, more strength, more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, more patience, you know, to deal with what's coming. Because you're going to have to deal with some niggas. You're going to have to deal with a lot of shit. And these are the things that you pray for. So when they do come to pass, you're able to deal with them. You know, you're able to, you know, overcome these things that would drive a normal person crazy who don't pray to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You know, and if you're in this truth and you fall away because you have little faith, then you were never of the elect. You know, so all we can do as men of the hopeful elect is pray to Yahweh Hashem Yahushua that we faint not in the time of adversity. You know, that we maintain, you know, our steadfastness, you know, because while everybody else would you know, is gonna lose their fucking heads, the men of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua are gonna stand strong and stand out amongst the wicked. Jumping down to verse 13. Woe to him that is faint-hearted, for he believeth not, therefore he shall not be defended. So if you don't believe upon the names of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, which a lot of Jakes don't, then you're gonna fall. You know, if it, you know, if you know, if you don't think that Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is able to save when He says that He's mighty to save, then you're gonna fall by the wayside. You know, if you don't understand the fact that, you know, you're being tested, then you're gonna fall by the wayside. You know, the idea, well, not even the idea. The thing is to, you know, not lose faith in the words of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. Hold fast, you know. I'll end up on this. Sirach chapter 2 and verse 14. Woe unto you that have lost patience. Yeah, you know, you might be in a situation where you haven't eaten for a few days and you're impatient, you know. And next thing you know, you done went ahead and you did some stupid shit instead of waiting, you know. When you notice, when the Spirit is upon you to tell you to wait, you know what you got to do in these days. You know, don't fall for the temptation. Pray on it. Pray constantly that you may be worthy to escape, you know, the things that are coming to pass. But if you have no patience, then you're going to fall. You know, because a lot of people seem to think that once they pray unto Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, that it's supposed to be an instantaneous thing. And sometimes it can be. You know, sometimes it can be. But other times, you know, the Lord can be like, all right, I want him to wait a little while. You know, you might have to wait a day to eat or 2 days to eat, you know. And at that point, you're not living in the Spirit. When you're having to fight these temptations, you're living in the flesh. You know, and so that's why it's a beautiful thing that, you know, we go through the Day of Atonement, you know, for our sins, so that way we get a feel for what it's like not to drink something or eat something or even taste anything besides the spit in your mouth. You know, This last Day of Atonement, I could have gone longer, because, the Spirit was on me where I didn't stress food as much towards the end of it. And that's a beautiful thing, because some of us might not have food available. But then again, through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, a brother might bring you food out of a portal, You might be asleep in the wilderness and wake up and you find birds bringing you food. Or you might wake up and there's a plate of food sitting right next to your face. And the smell of it just wakes you up. So, hey man, anything's possible with Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And what's going to happen, we don't know. But we just pray that we're found worthy to accept, the gifts that Yahweh Shem Yahushai, has promised unto his elect. Like I said, I'm not going to make this a long drug out lesson, you know what I'm saying? Because we're in that time where a lot of people are going to be desperate, Desperate times calls for desperate measures. And these people are starting to become desperate. And they're starting to do desperate things like rob, steal, Like I said, the book of 2nd Esdras is here. We're here, brothers. And so with that, I'd like to give all praise, glory, and honors to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakaha, Quadash, double honor to the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the elect of the nation of Israel. Shalom.